Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 14 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. Try number 2 here. I am your host, Brady. Co-hosts Mitch and Skylar here. Boys, say hi.
What up, what up?
Hello.
Glad to be here. We have a great episode planned today. We're going to talk a little bit about the MLB. It seems like they maybe finally got their shit together, and we're going to have baseball back. We're also going to talk just a little bit about the Dak Prescott franchise tag signing, as well as some moves in the Detroit Lions front office. Detroit, we talked about in the previous episode, and we highlighted the fact that as an organization, they have no idea what the fuck they're doing. So it is nice that there's a little bit of changes there. The next couple episodes we have planned are on the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts, but today we are breaking down me and Mitch's favorite team, the Green Packers. But before we get to any and all of that, we have to talk about baseball. So there was a huge development in the baseball world here. What are we going on now? Like 4 episodes straight where we've talked about baseball going back and forth. They had a plan. It was shot down. They had another plan. It was shot down. They come to an agreement. It finally looks like it's going to happen. Nope, shot down. Now today, a matter of minutes ago, we hear that the MLB players agree to report for a 60-game season in the year 2020, opening day set to be July 24th. Now, I'm just going to run you through everything, all the details on here, and then we're going to talk about what it is. This is reported from CBS as of about 6 minutes ago. It states that teams are to submit a 60-player roster. With this 60-player roster, what's going to happen is that everybody has to report by Sunday, or the teams have to have their roster in by Sunday at 3 p.m. What's going to happen is that there's going to be a really small, spring training that's going to start on July 1st, with the official season starting on July 24th. So teams have to submit a 60-player roster. Transactions freeze to end this week. So by the end of this week, we're going to have transactions that are going to be set again. So guys can be traded. Guys can be released. Guys can be picked up by other teams. The trade deadline looks like it's going to come August 31st, so about a month into the new season. There is going to be a COVID-specific inactive list, where according to ESPN's Jeff Passan, MLB players, or the MLB will have a COVID-specific inactive list that players will be placed on if and when they test positive or show symptoms. So you don't even have to test positive. If you show symptoms, you're placed on this list. There will be no set amount of time for players to sit out, unlike the regular injured list where players are required to miss at least 10 days. Then, to me, the most interesting thing is that per the MLB, who talked to the city of Nashville will host 2 teams of unsigned players who would be paid to remain in shape as potential replacement players should the need arise during the season. Because obviously, as we've talked about in previous episodes, the farm system isn't really active right now. So they're going to keep 2 teams of full players, which would end up being about 120 players, who are going to be there so that if Yankees catcher goes down with COVID, there's a replacement. If the Dodgers lose a pitcher, there's a replacement. If the Brewers lose a right fielder, there's a replacement, so on and so forth. This is so exciting to me. We're going to have baseball back by the end of next month. We're going to have spring training by July 8th. Do you know how excited I am? And I don't even like watching baseball, like regular season. But a 60-game season is way more interesting to me than a 182-game season. I love this. Are you guys excited about baseball being back? I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm finally excited that, they got their shit together. They made an agreement in place. And I think how the schedule breaks down is interesting. So it's 60 games, like you said. So 40 of them would be in division, and then 20 of them is going to be interleague with geographic counterpart. So if you look at the Brewers, they would play 10 games against the Cubs, Cardinals, Reds, and Pirates, and then 4 games against the White Sox, the Royals, the Indians, the Tigers, and the Twins. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see like teams that may not play each other all the time and just having like a geographical kind of like rivalry. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I have to say that the players kind of held up to their promise. They were like, stop sending us plans. Schedule the season. and we'll agree with you, and we'll sign up for it. And that's exactly what happened because we saw it. The MLB was like, here's a 60-game season plan, and the players were like, no, we're not going to agree to it. Because me and Brady were talking about it that night, where it's like they didn't agree to it, and we're like, well, nothing's going to happen now. And then he scheduled the season, and we're like, well, shit, now it's back on. I am interested to see it because I think that they will be the first sport back, which they somehow were able to pull it out of the gutter and be the first sport back because they'll be there a week before basketball starts kicking off with their resuming of their regular season because it's July 30th, I think, is the schedule for when basketball gets back.
Well, yes and no. So baseball opening day will be the 24th of July. So I guess they will be back about a week before basketball. But boys, imagine that. All right, July 24th ends up falling on a Friday. So on that Friday, we all get off work and we can watch baseball. And then the next Friday, we can all get off work and we can watch basketball.
And then who knows from the way that we could have, and then preseason should be starting within a week after that.
Knock on wood, man, but preseason, would end up starting about a week after that. Now, I haven't seen anything as if they're going to be spring training games between teams. It's obviously a really short spring training. It's only going to be about 16 days. So I'm not sure if that's the case, but I love this. I'm so excited, and I'm glad that they got themselves on a 60-game season. And I think what we might see is that if baseball is really smart, they'll realize that a 60-game season or that a shortened season may be the best option. To go back to what Mitch said, the geographical regions is the best idea that they could have had. Like when they threw out the proposal of combining the AL and NL West and Central and East that we talked about with the episode that TJ was on, that was an awesome idea because it works so well for players. It's a lot easier for Milwaukee to fly to Minnesota to play the Twins than it is to fly to Seattle to play the Mariners. And it's a lot easier for the Mariners to fly to go play the Diamondbacks than it is for them to fly to play the Red Sox or vice versa. So this works out well as we're not going to get to see those matchups. Like we're not going to get to see Yankees Dodgers unless it's in the World Series or Red Sox versus Cubs or whoever it might be. Like we're not going to see that until the World Series here starts up. Now, Mitch, I don't know if you've seen anything, but I haven't seen anything as to a proposed playoff as to how that would look. Have you seen anything?
No, I've not seen a playoff format, but I know that players will not get paid for being in the playoffs.
Will not get paid. Okay. Skylar, have you seen anything about it?
They did not change the playoffs whatsoever.
Okay, so it's still it's still
the same. Because I was looking at right after it got announced that they just needed to agree on like the health side of everything. That they were already talking about who the winners and losers were because that's what journalists like to do after every important event.
Yeah.
And they mentioned that the schedule does not include any expanded playoffs, which I think is kind of bullshit because of all of the playoffs in major sports, I hate baseballs the most.
Yeah.
Because I think it's stupid, like just in general.
No, I agree.
So it's we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm still excited that we're gonna get sports back. That makes me happy, really happy. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partially surprised that there hasn't been an expansion on the playoffs. I really thought that what they were going to do was pick a division winner and a runner-up for each of the, 6 divisions and then have them duke it out that way. I thought that would just be the best option, where you almost set it up the same way as you do the NFL, where, top 2 seeds get a bye, bottom 2 or bottom 4 battle it out, and then you go into the semis and then eventually, the championship round that way. So we'll see how it is. Now, I do also understand it because you're playing 40 of your 60 games in division. So obviously, if you don't play well in division, you're not going to get into the playoffs. But it does hurt because if you look at AL or NL, if the Brewers and the Diamondbacks both finish 35 and 25 and both have a 25-15 record in division, how are you going to figure out who gets the wild card there? Like, that's the questions that we got to see, because it's not like they're going to play each other,
Jousting match.
Well,
Yeah. Who can bang on a
also
trash
that's
can
kind
the
of.
loudest?
I also think that it's kind of hard then for divisions that are really good. So like I think of like the NL West in particular, and the AL East in my opinion at least,
Yeah.
where you have divisions like the AL East and the NL West, at least just in my opinion, where that they're hard divisions to play in. Where it's you have really good teams like I think like the Orioles and the Yankees and the Red Sox, like all three really good teams. And if you're playing 40 games against them, then that hurts your chance of making it to the wild card. If it's only the divisional winners that move on.
Yeah. I definitely agree that there's some divisions where, like, there's obviously a bonus to it. Like if I look at the way that the divisions are set up here, like the NL Central is going to be pretty neck and neck. Everybody in the NL Central is supposed to be improved this season. But then if I look at like the NL East, like the NL East is super interesting. And sorry, my phone just absolutely froze up here. So give me one moment. So the NL East is super interesting because you have Atlanta, Washington, New York, and Philadelphia, who are all just going to battle each other to a pulp in terms of play. Like, none of those teams to me really stands out, with the exception of maybe Washington, obviously. But then you look at like the NL West, and it's the Dodgers, and then the Diamondbacks should be okay, and then it's 50 feet of crap, where the Padres aren't going to be as good, the Rockies aren't as good, the Giants aren't as good. So we're going to see how it works out. But I'm excited. Now, Mitch, you also wanted to talk about the designated hitter rule. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so for this season alone, during the talks they tried to get it in next year as well, but obviously the players didn't want it. But this year we'll be seeing a universal designated hitter. So basically the NL and AL will each have a designated hitter for the first time, I think, in a while. And I think that's just going to be really interesting, especially for a team like the Brewers where, a Ryan Braun who's a good hitter, but he's getting up there in age with being an outfielder, how that could really benefit the team if Braun's just only hitting balls and then have somebody else out there. I think it could be really interesting. It could be a boost for some teams in the NL.
Yeah, it definitely could. If I'm not mistaken, it was that the AL had a designated hitter and the NL didn't, and I never really understood why that was the case.
Tradition, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, but then again, we also got to remember that up until the Astros moved over to the AL, there was 16 NL teams and 14 AL teams for whatever reason, So baseball's always been really weird when it comes to a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the rule changes here were going to be interesting to see. Baseball's plan on how they plan on testing, it has not come out yet, and we're going to see how that works. I know they plan on testing players often, but how often? How often are ballparks going to get sanitized? Are bats going to get sanitized? Are helmets going to get sanitized? Are hotel rooms going to get sanitized? Are players going to have to live in a little bit of a bubble? Like, what's the situation here? So there's a lot. The jury's still out on a lot of information, but baseball is, barring a cataclysmic event, planning on coming back by the end of July. Now let's move on to a couple other stories here. First off, Martha Ford, and this lady, I'm sorry, before I get to her, this lady has one of my favorite names of all time. I got to get it pulled up here, so give me a minute. Martha Ford, the owner of the Detroit Lions, plans on stepping down and will plan on allowing her daughter, Sheila Ford Hamp, will step in as the team's principal owner and chairman. Martha Firestone Ford is one of the coolest names to me that ever existed for an old woman. But she is stepping down as principal owner of the Lions, the team announced. Martha's daughter, Sheila Ford Hamp, will step in as the team's principal owner and chairman. This is obviously huge. We made it a point of focus in the previous episode on Detroit that the Lions are a miserably ran team. And part of that does start with Miss Ford as the principal owner. The decisions there haven't been good. And so it's going to be nice to see some younger blood come into the Detroit organization, and hopefully it breeds success for Detroit. I know the fans have been dying for it for a really long time.
Yeah, I definitely feel similar sentiments that hopefully this change in ownership leads to better things for the Detroit Lions, because ownership definitely has a role in how a team succeeds or fails. I mean, you can go look at Dolan's Knicks or Jerry Jones's Cowboys and just see the effect that they have on a team. And I think this could do some good, and hopefully Martha Ford's daughter is able to really hone on to the weaknesses of the Detroit Lions and bring the franchise up to being something respectable.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both of you. If I was anybody in the front office of Detroit, I'd be trying to get on her good side right now. Because I've heard nothing about her daughter. But being around that family and being around that organization, you can't be deaf to anything. If you have to be hearing the criticism that's coming your way, I mean, you've been part of that family, part of that organization almost your entire life. You probably know some things. So I mean, couple that with apparently Arthur blank black, and the Atlanta GM have told Dan Quinn that he needs to get his ass in gear because yeah. So I think that even though this last year we didn't see a lot of turnover, I mean maybe a little some, but not anything that we were unexpecting in the league. I think that this next year, we could be seeing some major head coaches leaving some organizations, and I'm interested to see what happens, especially with a new face that I don't really know anything about. Most common NFL fans probably don't know anything about. See how she handles running the team. We'll see.
Yeah, it is almost really similar to the situation Tennessee went through a few seasons ago, where one of the daughters of the previous owner stepped in, and now Tennessee's made a huge 180 as an organization. A few other things that we just want to talk about here. Dak Prescott, who we talked about in the Dallas episode, officially signed his franchise tender. In the amount of $31.4 million is what he's going to get paid. That is all guaranteed money this year.
That's all guaranteed?
Cap hit. Yep, that is all guaranteed. That is a pure cap hit, $31.4 million. And the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott have until July 15th to work out a long-term deal. Otherwise, they run the risk of having to try to franchise tag him again. So, and then what's your opinion on that? Is that surprising to you guys that he actually signed it? I knew he was going to sign it before week 1, but I thought it was still going to be a couple of weeks away.
How dare he just mess up my prediction like that? What a putz. So I think it's going to be a really interesting situation to monitor because, obviously he signs the tag and he's going to get all that money, but it sounds like they're not even close to getting a long-term deal together. So I feel like this is just going to turn into another Kirk Cousins situation in Washington, where they'll just keep franchising tagged in until they can't anymore and he moves on to better things. So I think unless Jerry Jones bites the bullet and, gives Dak what he's owed and deserves, it's just horrible.
No, I agree. One of the more interesting things that has come out from these contract talks is the fact that Dak Prescott wants less than a 4-year deal, and Dallas wants him to sign more than a 4-year deal. That's usually the complete opposite in terms of the NFL. Usually you get guys who want to sign a 4, 5, or 6-year deal, and the team wants them for 3 seasons. And this is vice versa. Dak doesn't want to stay in Dallas long term, and Dallas wants to keep him there. And that's where the issue really is coming about. So definitely interesting. And then the other thing in the NFL we got to talk about, Jamal Adams asking to be traded from the New York Jets. This one I kind of sprung on you guys. I forgot about it until about 2 seconds ago. Jamal Adams asking to be traded from the New York Jets. Jamal Adams, an all-star safety, I think one of the best young players in the NFL. He, along with J.J. Watt, are the only players in NFL history to record 200-plus tackles, 10-plus sacks, and 25-plus pass breakups within the first 3 seasons. So let's talk about that for a minute. J.J. Watt had 25 pass breakups in 3 seasons for a team.
Yeah, buddy.
That's pretty cool. Jamal Adams Jamal Adams is in a league of his own. He's by far the best player on the Jets roster. Do you guys reasonably see Jamal Adams being traded this season?
I don't know. I mean, the New York Jets franchise has come out and said, like, there's no way in hell we're trading him. But, I mean, if you go through some of his social media posts, he told Marcus May, his partner in the secondary, I'm going to miss playing with you. So it seems like he's dead set on leaving. And if he does, it's going to be really interesting to see, who he'll go to. Because I heard he's basically wants to go to a contender. And I've heard names like the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't know how the cap's going to work with that. Tampa Bay could be interesting. But, yeah, I don't know. It's all up in the air to me.
See, I think that the New York Giants GM and ownership have they have a question. Do we want to keep Jamal Adams or do we want to keep Adam Gase? And I really think that's their question, because all this proves to me is that Adam Gase is not the head coach that everybody thought he is, and that because if you are a head coach that can build an atmosphere, and because people are looking at this Jets team being like they're like 1 or 2 players away from contending in the AFC East, for contending in the AFC. If that's true, Jamal Adams would not want out of there. So it comes down to this idea where it's like there's not confidence in this locker room that they can go into an almost wide open AFC East with a good young quarterback, one of the most talented running backs the NFL has ever seen, not a bad wide receiver core, and still go, we can contend for at least the AFC East. And they don't, if Jamal Adams wanted out there, they don't believe that.
See, and this is where I'm going to push back, because you got to remember this was Adam Gase's first season with the Jets. The Jets, Jamal Adams was a first-round pick. He signed a 4-year contract with a 5th-year player option. The Jets don't have to worry about re-signing him or even picking up that 5th-year option until after this season is over. And with Ian Rappaport reporting that the NFL is projecting a $40 million per team cap hit next year due to the coronavirus, I completely understand why the Jets don't want to pay him big money right now. Because A, they don't know if they can afford it. And B, what's the use of paying the guy? You still got him under contract for 2 more years. Like minimum 2 more years. So if this was happening next season, where the Jets were wishy-washy about re-signing him, okay, I'd understand the demand for the trade. But to me, this doesn't make sense. Now, if he's truly unhappy in New York, okay, he's truly unhappy in New York, and frankly, I don't blame him. Gangrene as an organization has turned gangrenous. So I don't blame him on that end, but I understand where the Jets are coming from here. Like, there's bigger fish to fry. If you want to build a contender, it's not going to happen in 1 year. And I agree with you, Skylar. Adam Gase is not a good head coach, and I don't understand why he's coaching in the NFL. But Jamal Adams has to be a little bit more understanding here. He signed a 4-year contract with a 5th-year player option when he was drafted by the Jets. And that means he's under contract for 4 seasons with a 4 seasons with a 5th-year team option on there. So he's under contract for 4 years, and there's a possibility that the team picks it up on the 5th year. So if I'm the Jets, I have no incentive to trade him. What's he going to do? Sit out? Fine. Have him sit out. Have him sit out for 2 seasons and then cut him, whatever. But you don't know if you can afford to pay the guy the money that he justifiably deserves to be paid, because he deserves to be paid it. But I understand this perspective from both sides here.
No, I just have to say when it comes to this team, that I agree that the incentive to trade him isn't a lot, especially when you do technically still have 2 years left with him. But I think that if you do trade him, or he has to sit out, what kind of message does that send to people that to future free agents and college players that believe that they're talented? or justly are talented. You're gonna get picked by the Jets. You're thinking of signing with the Jets. Like that's gonna turn away talent. We're looking at like when we talk about like owners and coaches like that have been existing in Dallas and New York for the Knicks. The Knicks haven't been able to sign any talent due to their owner being like wasting talent. They haven't been good since the 90s and being an asshole. But since the 90s, yeah, there's been some good players that have stayed with Dallas, but most good players from Dallas leave Dallas. We go back to like Dak saying that he's not planning on staying there for a long time, or if he is, he wants to keep updating contracts every once in a while, extensions, things like that, to like guarantee he's getting some money coming in. It's because you have these that they mistreat their players, that they don't put them in an environment that's wanted, that's needed. And if Jamal Adams, who is a once-in-a-generational defensive back, like we can all agree on that, is looking at this and saying, I want to be traded. Or
I argue that it's a slippery slope here because he's a first-round pick who's signed basically a 5-year contract. And if after 3 seasons he decides he wants an extension, what stops the next guy who comes out of whatever university from having a good rookie year and then deciding that even though he's under contract for 4 more seasons, that he wants to hold out for an extension? Like, I get where the Jets are coming from here. I do know. I get where the Jets are coming from here because when they drafted this player, they understood he was a once-in-a-generational talent. They want to keep him once-in-a-generational. The Jets want him there. It's just the Jets are going, can we pay you next season when we know we're going to have a full amount of cap space, as opposed to this season where we don't know what the situation is going to be. And with them already having big contracts like Le'Veon Bell and C.J. Mosley on roster, I understand where the Jets are coming from here. Like, I get it.
Do we know if this is a money issue or if he just doesn't want to be a part of an Adam Gase team?
It's a money issue.
Because that's what. Oh, okay.
It's a money issue.
I wasn't sure.
From everything that I've read is that Jamal Adams feels disrespected because the first offer that the Jets made he thought was pitiful. And then the Jets basically told him, like, dude, this isn't top priority right now. Like, we have to worry about trying to field a team or whether or not we're going to field a team before we re-sign or extend anybody. And he took offense to that. And I understand why he would take offense to that because if I remember right, like the original offer the Jets offered him was like $8 million a year. Like it was chump change for a starting safety. But I understand what it is. From what I see, from what I've heard, Jamal Adams is asking for like north of $20 million a year. And if we're already walking in where the NFL cap space this year was just over $200 million, if 40 million of that is cut, you're talking about a 20% cap cut, which is it's going to be hard to field a team with $40 million cut in cap space, let alone try to extend or re-sign anybody that offseason.
Well, we've also known that the cap hit hasn't been it's not official yet, that it's still in the works. I mean, we know that there will be a cap hit. Like that's something that is understood. It's just it's gonna have to wait out. I think that it's a lose-lose situation for the Jets right now. Either they have to pay Jamal Adams a shit ton of money, or they have to lose him. That's their.
You're right, and it is, but it's a lose-lose situation that Jamal Adams is pushing on them. And I think the most disrespectful thing is the fact that he gave the Jets a list and said, these are the teams I want to go to, and if I go to these teams, I won't ask for an extension right away. And that to me is crappy. And I get the players wanting to have more, room and more talk when it comes to a lot of stuff like this. And it really all started with Le'Veon Bell and then followed by Antonio Brown. But this to me is a little bit ridiculous. Like, at least with Le'Veon Bell, it was a situation where he had been franchise tagged twice. Like with Antonio Brown, he had no guaranteed money left on his contract. Like Jamal Adams is going to get paid top safety money next season, as well as if they pick up his team option because he was a top 10 pick. So I don't get it. I don't understand it. But we got to move on. We got to talk about the core team of our episode 14 today, and that is the That is me and Mitch's hometown team, the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur's first season last year, they went from 6-9-1 to 13-3. Won the NFC North for the sixth time this decade. Aaron Rodgers finished the season with 4,002 yards, 62% completion rating, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Underrated MVP candidate, Aaron Jones, had 1,084 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, as well as 474 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Jamal Williams had 407 yards and a touchdown, and then he also caught 253 yards and 5 touchdowns. And star wide receiver Devontae Adams had 83 catches, 997 yards, and 5 touchdowns after only playing in 12 games. So, as we list each team, boys, where do you put the Green Bay Packers? In or in need of a rebuild, in or in need of a reload, 8-8 playoff caliber, or Super Bowl caliber?
Well, I definitely think they're a playoff caliber. There's some issues that are kind of keeping them from a Super Bowl contention, but I definitely think they're talented enough to be in the playoffs. I really have some questions with that defense, but I think there is some potential with that offense. So I'm gonna have to go with playoff contention for now, eh?
Mitch, you're flipping between like a Scotsman who was kicked in the mouth by a horse, a little bit of like a Kentucky Southern drawl, and really young Forrest Gump. Like I know what you're trying to go to, but it's not coming out well.
I think like just talk normally and you'll get the Wisconsin accent out. You have one, it'll be
That's
fine.
what I told him.
Nah, bro, you said we were gonna do this.
Or it's like, are we all gonna be talking like this today? Is that how it's gonna go?
Oh no, you know.
Oh, yeah,
talking
you know,
about the
you
team
know.
up north there, the hated
up north
rivals
up there?
of the Chicago Bears.
Oh, the
you know,
Bears.
with the Green Bay Packers, you know, just a great team, great organization. You know, just it's title town. You know, more championships than any other team. It's the small market team. You know, we just love them Packers. Anybody got a brat?
God damn it, Brady.
All right, Sky. So, Mitch, you have them ranked as what? I completely didn't hear anything you said because I was busy trying to get over the voice.
Okay, so I definitely think they are definitely a playoff contender, but if they fix up some issues this offseason or during the season, they definitely have a chance to be a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I think that my biggest problem is their defense because last year they let up a lot of yards. They let off a lot, like specifically per play. I mean, they were able to turn the ball over a couple times, being able to get that ball back to Aaron Rodgers. I think Matt LaFleur this last season did a really good job of covering up for some holes on that defense with a really awesome offense because I think that's what it is, and having a once-in-a-generational talent like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback helps. They're always a Super Bowl contender for me just because really they're at the top of the North every year. And for me in the NFC, the division between who's good and who's bad in the NFC is just so wide that the rich keep getting richer.
You know, Skylar, I'm gonna push back on you on that defensive point because a statistic came out that stated that the Green Bay Packers offensively and defensively ranked top 10 in terms of red zone efficiency. The offense was top 4 in terms of ability to score touchdowns once in the red zone, and the defense was top 8 in the ability to stop touchdowns in the red zone. So yeah, I get given up a lot of points, but they were the epitome of the bend don't break defense. They, as an offense, they gave up 13 turnovers last year. The defense forced 25. Offensively, they ranked 18th in yards and 18th in yards on defense. But points for and points against, Green Bay had the 15th offense in terms of scoring points, so run of the mill. But defense, they gave up the 9th fewest points in the league. So defensively, like, I'm okay with where they're at. Obviously,
no.
Okay, but
no,
Brady,
sir.
What?
But Brady,
I'm okay with defensively where they're at, and here's why. All right. Defensive line still strong. Pass rush still strong. Secondary is.
I mean, he's got a point there,
Bro.
Secondary is one of the best. Let me run you through a statistic. Chandon Sullivan, one of the lower tier corners that we have, had a average passer rating when targeted of 18.5%, and he's one of the lesser guys. All right, Jair Alexander is taking a step up. The interceptions number isn't there, but he's taking a step up. Kevin King has stepped up. Adrian Amos had a good season. Darnell Savage had a good season. The linebacker core is an issue, and we'll address that. And we'll get to that when we talk about free agent losses and free agent pickups. But I put Green Bay as a playoff contender, the same with you guys. Offensively, there's some steps that need to be taken. Defensively, it's there. And we can all agree that offensively, the rest of the NFC North took a step back. Chicago didn't do anything to address their offense, not really. Detroit's offensive line is trash. We talked about it. And Minnesota lost their best receiver and replaced him with a first-round talent who's going to get a shortened offseason. Defensively, this team is fine, is absolutely fine. All right, Christian Kirksey. We'll talk about Christian Kirksey when we get to him. I'd rather have Christian Kirksey over Blake Martinez, and I'll get to it when we get to it. So let's move on to free agent losses here. Well, you know what? You guys seem to have issues with it. So what's your guys' issues with my points?
Okay, I have one thing, one quick, because you know more than me about the Green Bay Packers. So give me my one thing, and then you can go.
All right.
Okay. 5.7 yards per play, Brady. Your team gave up 5.7 yards per play. That's not good. That is never good.
But you say the Green Bay offense was good, right?
The Green Bay offense is amazing.
Okay, but the Green Bay offense only averaged 5.4 yards per play. So if the Green Bay offense is amazing, averaging 5.4, isn't the Green Bay defense pretty good for stopping a team at 5.7? So which is it? Do we have a bad offense or a bad defense?
But what I'm saying is that also your offense has Aaron Rodgers, okay, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, it doesn't matter if they're averaging 5.4 yards per play when you can look at some of those plays and half of them is him slinging the ball downfield. Okay, like what I'm saying is that you guys' offense is really good, but your defense, it's middle tier. It's not good. It's middle tier, and it got worse.
All right, you ready to be educated?
Yeah, educate me.
All right, so with your comments about the secondary and the pass rush, I'm with it. I like it. I think it's good. I think it's what's the strength of the defense. What my issue with the defense and why I can't say I like it is the rush defense. Let me hit you with some stats. So in Green Bay's 4 losses, the defense allowed 120 carries, 721 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 6 yards per carry, and that's not including the QB rushing or kneeling down. So a per-game average from those stats is 30 carries, 180 yards, and 2.5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That's where my issue is with this defense. The rush defense is shit. It got exposed every time we played the 49ers, especially in that conference championship game, and we did not take the steps to address it. They're basically taking an Aaron Rodgers approach with Kenny Clark and saying, like, oh, we have Kenny Clark on the defensive line. He doesn't need help. He'll just be Superman. So that's where I take issue with it. I think they did a little bit to address inside linebacker, but that they didn't do anything to address defensive line that's going to have a significant impact, and that's what's holding the defense back and the team back.
Okay, so you're basing all of that off of 4 of the 16 games that they played.
Wait, but Brady, who did they play the rest of the season?
Oh, so who did they play the rest of the season? So
give me a second. Let me look at their season real quick.
Sweep Minnesota. They were above 500.
Who ran 144 yards on them?
You're right. Let's see. Here's
Dallas Cowboys 120. Detroit Lions ran 170 yards on you, Brady.
And how many of those were wins? How many of those were wins? All 4 games you mentioned were wins. All 4 games you mentioned were
Kansas City Chiefs,
Mitch,
118. Carolina Panthers, 163. Washington Redskins, 173.
Win.
Minnesota, again, 184.
Win.
Detroit Lions, 120.
Win.
We never led, though.
But we won. Who gives a shit if we lead? Tom Brady won 3 Super Bowls without leading until fucking Vinatieri kicks. Here's the point that I'm trying to make. Hey, how many times did Green Bay as a defense last year give up 20 or fewer points?
Let's see.
Give me a second.
The easy answer is 9. 9 of the 16 regular season games, they gave up 20 or fewer points, including 5 straight games to end the season. I'm not pretending that this is a Super Bowl caliber defense. What I'm saying is that you guys aren't giving it enough credit. All right. They gave every single team that Skyler mentioned there, if I caught them all, with those rushings, we still won. Okay? I'm okay with our defense. You're right, not to the Super Bowl, but nobody here ranked them as a Super Bowl caliber team. We ranked them as a playoff caliber team.
I did.
And I wasn't listening to what you said. So,
but it's not good enough.
It's not.
Bro, they were running basic running plays against us in that championship game because the defensive line and the linebackers couldn't do jack shit against that blocking. So everyone's going to watch that tape, and every team is going to run that same shit, and we didn't do anything to do anything new or address it, so that's what's going to happen this year.
Let's move over to the free agency.
No, because I want to address that point. So if everybody's going to watch that, why can't we then improve on that? Okay.
Because you didn't.
Because Mike Peck doesn't do adjustments.
Now I get.
He didn't do anything.
Now I get the points where teams were rushing against us. But even when teams were rushing against us, Green Bay still finished top 10 in terms of red zone efficiency. San Francisco ran all over us both times that we played them, and I understand that. But the common denominator in all 4 losses Green Bay had last season was what? The common denominator was that Aaron Rodgers and the offense was kept off the field. You look at the game against Philadelphia, started out strong, completely fell apart. You look at the loss to the Chargers, offense couldn't get anything going to the fourth quarter. And then you look at both games against San Francisco, and the offense just wasn't there. In both games against San Francisco, defensively, they held up pretty well for the first quarter and a half. And then they fell apart because the defense was on the field for far too long. In order for the defense to improve, the offense has to improve. Now,
Brady,
I'm more upset
Brady,
about...
how do you run out the clock? How do you run out the clock? How do you keep a team off the field? You run it, right?
Not when it's the first quarter and a half of a game. The first quarter and a half of a game is dependent on which offense can which offense can do the most with their first 3 or 4 drives. And in all 4 of those losses, Green Bay didn't do the most with the first 3 or 4 parts of their drive. If you go back, you go watch the first 2 quarters of that first game against San Francisco, and you see that the defense was all over San Francisco. And yeah, they gave up some big plays. And the issue with the Green Bay defense is that the run defense is bad, and they give up a lot of big plays. And I will cede that point, and that's what they have to work on. But the defense was getting sacked. Garoppolo was crazy bad. Defensively, they couldn't handle George Kittle. Okay, I'll admit that, and I wish they would have done more to address that. But
nobody can. I'm sorry.
You're right. Nobody can. But San Francisco ran against everybody. Everybody got beat against the San Francisco running team. So why is it that we hold it against Green Bay? The Chiefs still got ran against the Niners. Eventually, they were able to make.
Who's got the trophy?
You're right.
The problem there was that Garoppolo wasn't ready to win the Super Bowl.
If that's your point, who's got the trophy? Then why the fuck does it matter what Green Bay did? Because San Francisco didn't even win the trophy. San Francisco didn't even win the trophy. But Green Bay beat Kansas City. So
last point.
Yeah, because Mahomes didn't play.
Wait, one last point before we go to free agency, because we need to. Brady, if we're talking about the fact that the problem with your Packers was that they couldn't produce on the first four drives, they weren't explosive enough, they weren't doing what was enough, then they didn't solve that question either because they didn't add any weapons for Aaron Rodgers.
I will get to that point because I will see
because that's the problem. So it's for me, like, if we're just to segue into free agency, this free agency, like looking at it, like everything else, like the last couple, except for last year's, which 2019 was a really good offseason for Packers. I think they did great. This offseason was like almost every other offseason where they just didn't get what they needed. They needed a wide receiver. They got Devin Funchess. Mm-hmm. when AG Green was there, when Austin
AJ
Hooper
Green
was
wasn't there.
available.
He was a trade target.
Oh wait, but did they pursue him
Yes.
as a trade
I
target?
wouldn't.
Okay, I would have. Austin
Every
Hooper.
single wide receiver who was either a trade target or available for free agency, Green Bay pursued. They pursued Emmanuel Sanders both when he was leaving Denver as well as when he left San Francisco. And Emmanuel Sanders even stated that the only reason he signed with New Orleans over Green Bay was because he doesn't like to play in the cold. They went after Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson wanted $15 million a year. Green Bay didn't want to pay it. They tried to go after A.J. Green. A.J. Green was the asking price on that was a first-round pick. They tried to go after Curtis Samuel from San Francisco or from Carolina. They wanted a higher pick. They tried to go after what?
Allen Robinson the year before.
Allen Robinson the year before. They tried to go after Marquise Lee. Marquise Lee didn't want to play in Green Bay. They even tried to go after Deebo Samuel. People don't know this. They had a trade in place with San Francisco to pick up Deebo Samuel last season. But once San Francisco realized Green Bay was a team they were probably going to have to play in the playoffs, San Francisco pulled out of the trade.
Which is just smart. Which is being a smart GM.
You're right. It's smart. But every single available wide receiver, even tight end, Green Bay went after Austin Hooper. Green Bay had meetings with Eric Ebron. Every single weapon who was available, Green Bay pursued. The issue was
why didn't they draft one?
Sign them. They weren't. I'll get to that when we get to the draft here. But you're right. We have to go into free agent pickups and losses. So starting out with losses, talked about it in the Chicago episode. They lost Jimmy Graham, tight end, who was responsible for 58% of snaps. He had 38 catches, 447 yards, 3 touchdowns. Previous starting right tackle Brian Bulaga, who went to the Chargers, he had started 111 of 144 possible games in Green Bay. Lost wide receiver Geronimo Allison to Detroit, who had 34 catches, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns. Lost outside linebacker Kyler Fackrell, 23 tackles and a sack. And biggest loss, responsible for 98.5% of all snaps, Blake Martinez, middle linebacker to the Giants, 155 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and an interception from last season. Which of those hurts Green Bay the most, you guys?
I mean, I want to say Blake Martinez just because of Kirksey's health and there's really not much around him. But it's probably going to be Brian Bulaga leaving just because of when he's healthy, he's one of the best right tackles. And even though I think Ricky Wagner is better than what people give him credit for, but I don't think he's Bulaga level, but he's definitely solid. And when Billy Turner's right guard, I think you're going to see a decline on the right side. So I'll have to go with Bulaga being the key loss.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's Bulaga, especially with Aaron Rodgers getting up in age. We saw that he already had kind of a down, like he still performed great, but he had lower numbers than he did the year before. So I would say Bulaga because if Aaron Rodgers is going to get hit, because that offensive line isn't healthy or isn't good, then that hurts Green Bay's chances of making a deep run in the playoffs, like we all know they're capable of.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Bulaga. I understand why they let Blake Martinez go. He was gonna ask for really big money, and he got it out with the Giants. Green Bay just couldn't afford it, and we'll get to it. Green Bay has a lot of key players who are going to be up for contract extensions the next couple of seasons, including Kenny Clark and David Bakhtiari and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, and a lot of guys like that. So I understand. Bulaga as well, I get. He's a great player, and I love Brian Bulaga. What I liked when we get to the pickups here in a second is that I like that Green Bay addressed it, is the thing. And I agree with Mitch. Moving on to the free agent pickups, unlike last season where they had the most active free agency since they probably signed Reggie White in the 90s, Green Bay had a relatively slow offseason. Picked up Devin Funchess from Indianapolis. He only played in 1 game last year, but in his full season that he played in Carolina, he was responsible. The year Carolina went to the Super Bowl, he was responsible for 63 catches, 840 yards, and 8 touchdowns. They picked up Ricky Wagner, a right tackle from Detroit, who was responsible for 70% of their snaps. He played in 40 of 48 possible games in Detroit. He did miss 4 games last season. And Christian Kirksey from Cleveland. He only played in 2 games, and yet, even in those 2 games, he was still responsible for 11% of all Cleveland's defensive snaps. In the 2 full seasons he played at Cleveland before an injury bug hit him these last years, Those 2 full seasons, he was responsible for a grand total, including a league leading total of 286 tackles, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 8 passes defense. Now, that was the 2 full seasons that he played, so take that with a grain of salt. But how do you guys rank the free agency pickups?
I have to give it a D plus, and here's my reasoning why. I'm with you. I like Christian Kirksey. If he's healthy, I think he has the potential to be better than Blake Martinez, but the dude hasn't been healthy in 2 seasons, and we're banking on him to be healthy. Otherwise, if he's, still injury prone, then there's really nothing in the middle of that defense, and that's going to hurt us a lot. And then with Ricky Wagner, he had a down year last year, but he only gave up 3 sacks and only had 3 penalties. And there is talk that injuries could have been the factor to that, but if injury wasn't a factor, and that's a sign of him declining, like the point I made before with Brian Bulaga being the major loss, that right side of the line, it becomes a liability and hurts that offense. And with Devin Funchess being the only wide receiver of note we really added to that core, I mean, he had a bad injury with the Colts, and it was basically a lost year. And, he was all right with the Panthers. So at best, maybe he's that third option. And then the 2 other guys we signed were 2 defensive linemen who are basically no-name guys except for Hester because he blocked Cody Parkey and caused the double doink.
Yes, he did.
But otherwise, there's so much potential for this to be good, but just with health concerns, and I don't know, I can't give it better than a D plus just because of I think the downside weighs more than what these players could be doing good.
I mean, again, I'd have to agree with Mitch. I think that it's anywhere between a D plus and a B, because if you get the best of these players, these are 3 steals. These are 3 great players that you're getting, all really good players. Like Christian Kirksey is, again, great young talent. Like you said, his 2 full seasons with Cleveland, he was all over the field. He was basically the linebacking core for that team. And you look at, and then Devin Funchess, he had some really good moments with the Panthers. He was part of the reason why that Super Bowl team, why they got to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. I think with just being a threat at the wide receiver position. And then, like we talked about with Detroit, how much of a loss Wagner was because he was responsible for so many snaps, because he only let up 3 sacks. Even when injured, he was still one of their better offensive linemen. We're going through that. But because the thing in common with all 3 of those, Devin Funchess hasn't played a full season since the Panthers went to the Super Bowl. That's ridiculous. Christian Kirksey only played 2 games last year. Wagner missed 4 games. I think of the 3, Wagner can get past his injury the most and keep going. But those other 2 players that haven't played full seasons in a while, and with this bad off season, when it comes to learning playbooks, when it comes to getting used to the team, when it becomes to just training up your own body again to make sure that it can withstand playing a season, it makes me a little worried.
I give the offseason grade a C. And the reason is that Devin Funchess did have a wash year in Indianapolis, basically because of the injury. But in the previous 4 seasons in Carolina, he ended up putting up about 161 catches, so averaging 40 catches a year, put up 230-plus yards, as well as 21 touchdowns. The production is there, all right? Green Bay doesn't necessarily need another all-star wide receiver, because if you look at the kind of offense that LaFleur wants to run, it doesn't feature usually more than 2 wide receivers. It's going to be fullback heavy. It's going to be tight end heavy. And we see that with some of the ways that they drafted here, which we'll get into. Ricky Wagner was solid in Baltimore when he was out in Baltimore. He was solid in Detroit. Yeah, the issue was that he just couldn't always stay healthy. But Green Bay has had issues with that in the past. I mean, Bulaga missed 33 career games in Green Bay. He averaged missing 3 games a season. So you're not really losing production. As well as Green Bay's been very vocal that their backup, Yoshua Njoman, who they drafted a couple seasons ago, they're very high on him, and they're very, very high on him. And we see that the offensive linemen are there, and Green Bay addressed the offensive line as well in the draft when we get to it. So the opportunity is there. I think Green Bay did something that Green Bay's always kind of done, which is they went back to development over paying big players. And we'll hop into the draft here, but we'll talk about it. I love the Christian Kirksey pickup. Mike Pettin wants to run a single linebacker set. That's what he wants to do. Yeah, I get it. It hurts you in terms of the run game, especially when you're playing really big offensive linemen, and hopefully he can address that. That's going to be the big question mark. But if Christian Kirksey can stay healthy, which is a big if, I think he's a great pickup. So let's move into their draft. I think this might be the most contentious part of the entire episode. Green Bay, I'm going to run through all the draft picks, and then we will go from there. Green Bay with their first pick of the draft, the 26th overall pick, they traded up with Miami from 30, gave up a fourth-round pick to pick Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State University. Second-round pick, 62nd overall, they picked running back A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. 94th overall pick in the third round, they go Joshua Degura, tight end out of Cincinnati. Fifth round, 175, they go with Kamal Martin, linebacker out of Minnesota. Sixth round, they had 3 sixth-round picks. They went with John Runyon from Michigan, offensive lineman. Jake Hansen, the center from Oregon, and Simon Stepaniak, offensive tackle from Indiana. In the seventh round, picks 236, they went with Vernon Scott, safety out of TCU, and edge rusher Jonathan Garvin from Miami. How do you guys grade the Green Bay Packers NFL draft?
If we did this like right after the draft, you know how I would grade this. But after like letting some time to like think about it a little bit, I've raised my draft grade up to C+.
Okay.
And here's my reasoning why. The whole Jordan Love situation was one of my biggest things that really upset me. A lot of people have been comparing it to like, oh, it's the Aaron Rodgers situation, when it's really not, because Brett Favre was threatening retirement every year, and Aaron Rodgers was there at their original pick. Where this is, Aaron Rodgers has come out and say, like, I want to retire here, and they go up and draft Jordan Love when there was positions of need where the value was there, in my opinion, where they could have taken it, but they decided to go this route, and I just really don't like that pick. And maybe if it was a better quarterback, like if it was Tua, I think maybe I would understand it more and be more okay with it. But Jordan Love had one good season, and then the next season he was terrible. So which guy are we really getting? So that's why I'm not really that high in the Jordan Love pick. A.J. Dillon, I think this is basically saying, hey, Jamal Williams is basically gone, and if we can't get a contract with Aaron Jones, at least we know we have a guy who can run the ball the way we want to. So I definitely like that pick a little bit more now. Josiah DeGuara, I think, could be an interesting thing. I think he's mostly going to be playing that like fullback like spot and also be that second tight end, because I think they want Sternberger to be that main tight end. So I think that gives Rodgers another weapon and could definitely help the offense, especially when it comes to like the blocking department. Kamal Martin, to me, I don't know. I think he's just going to be another guy, kind of a backup. I like the John Runyon pick. I think he has the potential to beat out Billy Turner this offseason for that right guard spot, and I hope he does, because I like this kid, and I think he's going to be a boon for this offensive line. I think Jake Hansen is going to be a solid backup, and I think that he could be potentially replacing Corey Linsley if they can't give him a contract. Stefaniak, I think he's just going to be a swing guy. I think he has the versatility to play tackle or guard, so I think he kind of takes that spot for them. Vernon Scott, I think, is just death. The only thing I heard about him was that big pick six he had against Oklahoma. Otherwise, he was kind of silent. And then I think Jonathan Garvin is just more pass rush depth and kind of takes that Kyler Fackrell role. So that's why I give it a C+.
I'd have to go with like just a straight C, because I agree with a lot of what Mitch said. I just think that the big thing is the first 3 picks. In my opinion, like I understand some depth ideas, like getting a young quarterback ready, because eventually, I guess the Packers front office believes Aaron Rodgers is going to be leaving sometime soon. But nobody believes Jordan Love's going to step in for Aaron Rodgers this season. Nobody believes that at all.
Yeah.
So I honestly think that those 3 picks could have been used much better. Wide receivers, linebackers, defensive linemen. You could have used those 3 picks on someone else. Not to say that I love AJ Dillon. I thought that he was a great running back at Boston College. Jordan Love, I thought was a good quarterback. He did not need to go to Green Bay. There were other teams that needed him, and I think Green Bay was just like, he's still here at the 26th pick. We might as well take a shot.
Which
Dequara,
was Green Bay's exact thought process when they drafted Aaron Rodgers as well. Remember, when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, he was the only player they still had a first-round grade on.
Yeah. Dequara, I think he did some good things. He's got some athleticism, an okay blocker with Cincinnati, but nothing like jumps off the tape for me. The 3 offensive line picks, I really did like them. I thought that, you know what, they're all from like really good offensive line teams that 2 of them are Big Ten players that are used to playing in the cold, used to playing up north there. And are used to and won't complain about the cold and will be ready. But none of them, I personally think are starter ready. I think that they still need some time to develop, especially with this offseason being as crazy as it is. It doesn't help them. And the last 2 picks, I'm just kind of like, eh. It's like they're good picks, solid picks, worth of like a 7th. Like I think that they're good quality picks for a 7th round. But at the end of it, I'm just kind of like, That's just kind of my opinion on the entire draft, except for the Jordan Love pick, where it's just kind of like, okay, that's interesting, but the rest of it was just either disappointment or kind of like, okay, I can see how this fits in for the future, but you're trying to win now.
What are your thoughts on the Kamal Martin pick?
Again, just
Okay.
I mean, I honestly think he's a good player. I do. I think that getting him, I think that he can do good things. I think the Packers can do good things with him. But it's just kind of like that's just that was my thought process of their entire draft. I was just sitting there going, what is this? And I don't know what it is. Brady.
I give the Green Bay Packers draft a B+, and the reason that I do so is because the Green Bay Packers, to me, are the only team this offseason to draft for the ridiculous offseason that we're going to have. Mitch, you mentioned something when we talked about Detroit, where you said that you really feel like a team like Minnesota is going to take a step back because of how many rookie guys that they're going to bring in, and they're going to expect to play right away, right?
Uh-huh. We
talk about a lot of the offensive linemen that were drafted within the first round. Very few of them are pro-ready right now, and they're already going to get a shortened offseason. Green Bay, to me, took the approach, and it's even been talked about with guys like Gutekunst and LaFleur, of they almost didn't want to draft anybody who would be play now. Because if they took somebody who was play now, they would be throwing raw talent on the field with almost no preparation, because we're going to have a shortened offseason. Green Bay understood that this was a 13-win team last year with the gaps that still exist. And if they were to have gone and drafted Justin Jefferson or drafted Patrick Queen, maybe the natural talent is there, yeah, but you run the risk of putting your team in a more detrimental position because you're putting a guy who has more natural talent but maybe doesn't have the understanding of the NFL caliber teams that they're playing versus a guy who does have the understanding, and maybe the natural talent isn't there, but Green Bay's always been wit over craft, always been brain over brawn. I like the Jordan Love pick. Jordan Love suffered from an unfortunate huge drop in talent at Utah State in his junior season. His sophomore season, he threw 32 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And Jordan Love would even say that in his junior season, he tried to do too much. Like, he tried to force the ball when the passes weren't necessarily there. But if you look at it, if you look at the raw talent of a player that he is, his arm strength is fantastic. His mobility is fantastic. His ability to throw on the run is fantastic. And, oh, hey, what are Aaron Rodgers' 3 greatest strengths? Arm strength, mobility, ability to throw on the run.
And being handsome.
And even if Aaron Rodgers treats him the same way that Brett Favre treated Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love is going to get the absolute pleasure of sitting in a film room with Aaron Rodgers and understanding how to play quarterback. I love it. The A.J. Dillon pick, I actually really enjoy because we already talked about Green Bay is going to have to either decide between Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams. They can't keep both, not with the offseason that they plan on having. So you're going to bring in A.J. Dillon, who's a very Derrick Henry-esque back, who had 1,685 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns last season at Boston College. And if either Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams is gone, well, you've got a big bruiser back to sit there and play the type of football that Matt LaFleur wanted to play in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. The Josiah Deguara pick, I love. I think that he's going to fill the role almost similar to like what Richard Rodgers did back a couple of seasons ago, where he's going to line up in the backfield. Very similar to like what John Kuhn did with Green Bay, where he's going to line up in the backfield and be the guy who you have to put a tight end on, where you have to put a linebacker on in order to cover. He had 39 catches, 504 yards, 7 touchdowns in Cincinnati. He was great. And in fact, there's even stories of when in tight end meeting rooms, LaFleur was showing tight ends Deguara's film at Cincinnati as to how to do things properly. Fundamentally, he's all there to be a great player. And I like him lining up in a fullback flex position. I have no issue with the offensive line picks. I think those are great. John Runyon is a really underrated player. Unfortunately, he suffered from Michigan not being so good this last season, and that hurt his stock. I like the Hansen pick. It brings depth. I like all these guys because they're depth players who can play center or guard or tackle or guard, and they're flexible like that. So if an injury happens, there's guys that you can plug in there, which is great. Vernon Scott, hit or miss to me. I do like the Jonathan Garvin pick because when we talked about Okwara on the last episode with Detroit, we said, hey, 18 tackles for the whole season, that doesn't cut it for an edge rusher. Well, here's an edge rusher from a worse team in Miami who had 37 tackles, 5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He was probably the best defensive player Miami had last year, and Green Bay got him to help step in. So now Rashawn Gary should take a big step year 2. You've still got the Smith brothers there in order to get the outside pass rush. Kenny Clark on the inside, who had a really good season. I like the step that Green Bay is going, and I give it a B+ because Green Bay, to me, was the only team who drafted not play now, not win now, but win maybe when we get a full offseason. All of these guys, to me, can develop throughout the season. Yeah, Jordan Love's not going to play much, if at all. But all those guys have the opportunity to develop through the season and get periodically better. And I think as a team, as an organization, that's one of the best ways to go about it. Because if we look at some of the guys who drafted need now, you look at Minnesota, you look at even San Francisco drafting Javon Kinlaw, right? They trade DeForest Buckner. They're going to bring in Javon Kinlaw. He's not going to get a full offseason. He's going to get a shortened offseason, and he's going to get thrown in the middle of that defensive line. We talk about Tua. We talk about Joe Burrow. We talk about all these guys. They're not going to get a full offseason. And with Green Bay and all the guys they picked, they don't need a full offseason because they're going to periodically get the regular season as well. And that's an aspect to this that I don't think anybody's taken into consideration when grading the Green Bay draft.
Hey,
Just
stop making sense.
Say that again, Mike?
Stop making sense. We don't like that here. This is for hot takes only, baby.
Okay, Brady, I'm gonna give you this because I will tell you that is the best possible outlook for this team, for this draft class. I would say it's the best possible. If I'm looking at the best upside on all of these players, I would give it a B+ as well.
Mm-hmm.
But as a team that was literally a good rush defense away from playing in the Super Bowl and maybe winning the Super Bowl, that doesn't cut it for me. Because this team, I get because you have a lot of players that you're going to need off-season extensions or contracts, and they're going to be asking for a lot of money because you have a lot of good players. I mean, if you're a good team, you have a lot of good players. That's just how it works. For me, if I'm looking at all of that and I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to draft for the future then, but this is a team that can win now. And if they just addressed some of the things that they needed to address, not saying that, again, if I'm okay with the last 6 picks because those fill depth needs that you do need, that they're versatile players that can play other places. But those first three picks, you could have used it for players that can develop but fill a need. Like might not be the best, but put them alongside good players. So in the linebacking core, in the on that defensive line, in the secondary, wherever you need to put them, and they can learn against veterans throughout the season and still play. You can use those picks. I'm not saying, you know what, Jordan Love, he could be a Hall of Famer. I have no idea. AJ Dillon could do amazing things for you guys. I don't know. Decora, right? Yeah, he could end up being like, I don't know if Adam LaFleur showed game film of him and said that this is what you're supposed to look like as a tight end.
He did, yeah. That was reported after he got drafted.
Well, that's awesome. But what I'm saying is that yes, you can look at some of those things and be like, this is awesome how they performed here, their talent around them, whatever. Okay, but when as a person that actually genuinely likes seeing the Packers succeed, because when the Packers succeed, football's more enjoyable and better to watch. I feel like they just kind of looked at the season and went, we're not going to try this season. We're just going to give it to next season. And that as a football fan kind of makes me upset because they know they're going to be good this season, but instead of trying to win the Super Bowl, they're like, we're going to wait a season. And I get it with the offseason we have. But it's like they're not willing to push it. Because here's the thing. Every other team, like you just said, every other team has to go through this, and they're not being like, okay, we're more prepared. Our team is still mainly intact, and we can attack this. But instead, they decide to kind of sit back and wait.
If Green Bay was 9-7 or worse last year, I would completely agree with you. But this was a Green Bay team that now has to deal with probably an easier schedule.
Speechless.
And still went 13-3.
Yep.
So, to my point, before some technical issues there, Green Bay was 13-3 last season with a season this year that's probably easier than their schedule last year was. Nobody expected Green Bay to be 13-3, and yet they were. And there's really no stopping Green Bay from being top tier again. Sure, we can argue that once they get into the playoffs, this team hasn't done enough. But you can't get into the playoffs unless you have a winning team, which Green Bay already has. So I like the draft. I think that if Jordan Love ends up winning a Super Bowl in Green Bay, this draft immediately becomes an A+. And I would argue that everything Skylar said with the drafting guys who are ready now and having them play is exactly what Green Bay can still do. Nothing's stopping these guys from getting reps. And if you talk about Degura, he's going to get reps at the tight end position. If you talk about Dillon, he's going to get reps at the tight end position. If you talk about everybody in the offensive line, they're going to get reps in their positions against pro-ready competition. Can you guys hear me?
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we can. We're just making fun of you.
Yeah, okay.
So
let's move on to the schedule since you guys are fucking assholes. Yeah, whatever. So we've talked about Green Bay a couple of times here in regards to the Chicago and the Detroit episodes and a few others. Go back and listen to all the episodes. Listen to the games that they pop up on. But to start off the season, Green Bay goes to Minnesota to play the Vikings. They won the first time in Minnesota in the brand new stadium last season, and they beat them in a Week 16 matchup. I have Green Bay winning this game. I think Minnesota walks in with a lot of question marks in the secondary, a lot of question marks in terms of wide receivers, and I think Green Bay walks into Minnesota and gets the win.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, your audio was jumping all over the place for me. Yeah, I have the Green Bay Packers starting off with a win. Like the point that Brady made in his rant earlier, with the Vikings bringing in so many rookies in important positions with a shortened off season against the Green Bay Packers. For the most part, their core is intact and they're all experienced now. I definitely think it's going to be a pretty good win for the Packers, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to go up into the stands and break that fucking horn over his knee.
I actually have Green Bay losing this game because as much as I think that I think that because like we've said in the last couple of years, how many times has Green Bay walked into Minnesota and won?
Well, in the new stadium,
Once.
they've only played 3 times.
But once, right? In the last couple of years that they won once while going into
Mike
Minnesota.
McCarthy was holding us back.
Well, yeah, they lost once, and then they were winning, and then Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone, and then they won one time. Okay.
So what I'll say is I think that this weakness of this team is still the run game. We don't know if Delvin Cook will be will be done with his holdout by the time week 1 starts. I think he will. I think Minnesota exploits that. I think Green Bay takes a hard look at themselves after this game, but that they lose this game.
What if Cook isn't there?
We haven't really.
What if Cook isn't there? Green Bay wins, I believe.
Okay, just checking.
And so then I'm going to go on to that point, because if you look at the Minnesota cap space, Minnesota only has, in terms of flexible cap room this season, about $10 million. Dalvin Cook wants a $17 million a year contract. Unless Minnesota cuts people, the money's not going to be there that he wants. And he said that he won't play.
Easy, cut Cousins.
Yeah, right? Minnesota took a $9 million dead cap hit in the Stephon Diggs trade. Like $9 million gone with the trade of Stephon Diggs. I don't know if Dalvin Cook's going to be there week 1 because Minnesota doesn't have the cap to support it. Minnesota barely had the cap to sign their own draft picks.
Well, no, I agree. I think that they're in some dire straits and they need to figure some shit out right now. But I also think that with this offseason and with Green Bay still having to work on some of those things, I think that Minnesota – I think it's going to be a close game, but I still think Minnesota can eke it out.
All right. Well, you're a dick. So
I am.
They host the Detroit Lions. It's a game we already talked about. I have Green Bay winning this game. Even though the Lions play Green Bay more competitive than anybody else in the NFC North, I think the Lions have way too many questions offensively and defensively, and the Packers end up with another division win.
Yeah, I'm with Brady. I think the Packers are going to beat the Lions. I think that the Lions are too talent deficient right now to be able to compete against the Green Bay Packers. And even though they do have Kerryon Johnson, who is a good runner when healthy, it's a big question mark if he's going to be healthy. And, then they have to rely on DeAndre Swift, a rookie in a COVID-19 offseason. So with that being said, I think the Green Bay Packers will have an easier win than they've had against the Lions in the past couple of years.
I agree. I think the Packers win for reasons. Look at last episode because I don't feel like repeating it. It's just they win.
All right. So then heading into week 3, they go to New Orleans to play the Saints. I have Green Bay losing this game. I think New Orleans just brings way too much to the table. I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be an interesting one, but Green Bay historically doesn't play well in the Superdome. They haven't the last couple of times they've gone there. Even if there's no fans in the stands, while I think Drew Brees is going to take a severe step back here this season, I like what New Orleans did this offseason. I have New Orleans winning that game.
This is going to be the Packers' first loss of the season. I don't think our rush defense is good enough to handle a back like Alvin Kamara, who's a good runner and pass catcher. And Jari Alexander is going to have his hands full trying to cover Michael Thomas, who can easily make a claim to being the best wide receiver in the league right now. And right now, I don't think we have a position that's good enough to handle a tight end like Jared Cook. And I think that Drew Brees is going to take a step back, but I think how the offense is set up right now, it puts him in a good place where he doesn't have to be the Drew Brees of long ago. He can be what he is now and still succeed just with the talents around him and having a really good offensive line. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor.
Yeah, I don't think Drew Brees is going to take a step back because every year I thought he's going to take a step back, and he honestly doesn't. He just keeps balling out like he always does. So I think that Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara, and I think Jared Cook's a criminally underrated tight end, at least in my opinion. So I think that he'll exploit the lack of good linebackers in Green Bay, and Alvin Kamara, again, like you said, he's too versatile of a back for their defense. There's too many weapons for them to use, and their defense just got better. So in my opinion, it's an easy win, or not an easy win, but it's a win for New Orleans.
Mitch, are you okay? You look like you just got a text that your mom died.
Sorry, I was looking at the World Series odds, and I don't like them.
All right, that's fair.
Because it says the Brewers have no chance?
Yeah, they say like the Mets, the Cubs, and like other trash teams like that. Even the Padres have a better chance of winning the World Series than us.
Yeah, whatever. We'll get over it. We'll talk about baseball another day. Week 4, a game that we already talked about in the Atlanta episode, they host the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta has just way too many questions on the offensive line, way too many questions defensively. The whole defense is a question mark. Green Bay wins that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Green Bay is going to win this game. I don't think that defense can handle the offensive weapons that we have. And I think Jari Alexander can handle Julio Jones. I think he's talented enough. And I think that Kevin King can handle Calvin Ridley. And you take those guys out, you're basically left with severe injury-prone Devontae Freeman behind a okay line. So with that being said, I think they're going to win it, and I think they're going to give the game ball to Darius Gunter.
Again, I think that if for every reason I've said in the past, Atlanta's a team that desperately needs to improve and hasn't over the last couple seasons. They're going to lose because it's Atlanta.
All right. Well, heading into Green Bay's Week 5 bye, 4 weeks through the season, Mitch, you and I both have Green Bay at 3-1. Skylar, you have them at 2-2. Coming out of the bye, Green Bay goes down to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. I have the Green Bay Packers beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa, and in large part because of the fact that the Tampa Bay defense ranked 29th in points allowed last season, was one of the worst defenses. I don't really like what they did in terms of the secondary. I understand they have one of the best linebacking groups in the NFL, absolutely hands down. Devin White and Levante David are two criminally underrated players. I love the progression Devin White has done from the last couple of seasons. I don't like the secondary. Offensive line is huge question marks. They have Ali Marpet, and then it's 50 feet of crap, and then it's Tristan Wirfs, and then it's 100 feet of crap. I think it's going to be the worst offensive line that Tom Brady has maybe ever played with in his career. While the weapons are there, I think it's going to be like a 38-35 shootout of a game. I tip my hat to Green Bay.
Oh, boy, I wish I had your confidence. I really wanted to say this was a win for us, but I had to look at it realistically. And I just think that, with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and some form of Rob Gronkowski, and even if he doesn't get the start, you still got O.J. Howard and, the other tight end. I just don't know how we can defend that. I mean, I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to give King and Alexander fits, and I can't even name a player who can match up against any of their tight ends right now and be successfully covering them. And with Tom Brady throwing the ball, even though he's, in my opinion, I think he's similar to Drew Brees. He's declining right now, but I think he's in a good enough situation with those weapons and a subpar run game and okay offensive line. I think he's going to succeed and show why he's Tom Brady. And I'm a little more high on the defense. I don't think it is as bad as you're saying it is, but I don't think it's like the Denver Broncos. But I'm not saying they're like the Legion of Boom or the Broncos defense, but I think they're, solid. So I can't give the win to Green Bay, even though I want to see Green Bay beat Tom Brady.
As I've seen Tom Brady do better with worse offensive lines, honestly.
Name a worse offensive line than what Tampa has to bring to the table right now.
The one that let him tear his ACL.
Oh, the Week 1 matchup?
Yeah.
The Week 1 matchup where with Matt Castle, the offensive line was still good enough to take him to 11-5.
Or Bill Belichick's just a great coach.
Bill Belichick can be as great of a coach as you want. He can't go out and play left tackle.
Okay. You don't know, dude. Okay. All I have to say is the teams between 2011 to 2014 were like the 3 worst offensive lines the Patriots have ever had, and that by itself is the reason why we didn't go to a Super Bowl in those 3 years. Or wait, we did. No, 2010 to 2013. Sorry, I get them mixed up. But it's. You
still went to a Super Bowl.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, you went
not
to
Giants.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah.
Okay.
He blocked out of his memory.
Okay. Exactly. 2007 to 2014 is just gone. But they're like in Tom Brady. Like I will say, those periods, our offensive lines were not good. Because the way that you would beat us is have a really great defensive line like the Giants had in 2007 and 2011. And that's how you beat us. So I've seen Brady do better with worse offensive lines. I still think the Packers go in and win this game. because I think like I just think Tampa Bay is better than you think that they are, Brady. But I do think that Aaron Rodgers is just too good of a quarterback. And Tom Brady's not that kind of quarterback. He's not I'm going to throw a Hail Mary and win the game. He's I'm going to do a 2-minute drill and pick you apart with short pass routes. So that's where I have to give the edge to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
Like, I understand Mitch's points and stuff, like with the weapons, like I get it. And like Tom Brady is good in terms of his pocket presence, but my issue is Tampa's offensive line. Like, let's look at their starting right guard, Alex Kappa, ranked 40th in terms of all guards in the NFL last season. 40th. All right. Their center was the 34th overall offensive lineman, the third center. So yeah, I'll give them that. And then their left tackle, Donovan Smith, offensive grade according to Pro Football Focus of 70.8%, which ranks him as 32nd best in the NFL. So literally the worst starting left tackle in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. And you're going to put him on the blind side of Tom Brady. And even if you switch it and you put Tristan Wirfs over there, who I love the Tristan Wirfs pickup, by the way, and you put him on the right side, then you're going to have him guard guys like Brian Burns, Za'Darius or Preston Smith, Cameron Jordan, Nick Bosa, just to name a few. So
I'm so confused. I was like, those guys don't play the Packers.
No, I'm talking about the Buccaneers offensive line. My thing is, like, Tom Brady can have all the weapons he wants, but if the offensive line is going to give up 5 sacks, like I predict that they will in this game, I don't necessarily know if it matters. And Skylar, just to your point about your earlier point about running the ball, Tampa has no run game, and in this situation, I like Green Bay's defense and their ability to hold the ball better than I like Tampa.
I picked Green Bay to win the game.
No,
I gave you the reason why.
I'm talking about your earlier point where you said you got to run the ball to win games, and I agree with you. And I think Tampa can't run the ball, which is why Tampa.
Well, no, I agree. They don't have a running back for shit.
Air raid offense.
Exactly.
Yeah, talk to Mike Leach about how good that works. Week 7, they go to Houston to play the Texans. Houston's just taking a huge step back this season. Absolutely massive. Offensive weapons aren't there. Offensive line still has a huge issue. Deshaun Watson is a good enough quarterback to get you 6 wins in a season, but not much else. This is not a win for Houston. Green Bay walks into Houston and gets their 3rd straight win of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Green Bay is going to easily get a win here, and I think this win is going to get them some traction as being a contender.
Yeah, I think that we've all kind of agreed that Houston's on a downhill slope after the DeAndre Hopkins trade, aka the worst trade ever. Like one of the most one-sided trades ever. So as much as I love Deshaun Watson, as much as I love they have good players, but it's not enough to match the mites that is Green Bay.
Yeah, agreed. Week 8, they host the Minnesota Vikings. I have Green Bay winning this game as well. Minnesota historically doesn't play as well in Green Bay. They're a little bit better in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins, he won a couple of games last year, but he still played bad against Green Bay in the 2 matchups. He has not played well against Green Bay in his entire career, really. I like Green Bay in that matchup. I think the Packers get their 3rd division win of the season.
Yeah, I agree with Brady. I think this is going to be another Green Bay win. With the points that he said, that even if they tried to get Dalvin Cook back, they would have to cut some people. They just don't have the cap space. So with him gone and your really only big offensive weapon being Adam Thielen, I think it's going to be another easy win for the Packers.
This is where I kind of think it's like Matt LaFleur's not going to let him lose 2 games in a row. Adam Rodgers isn't going to let you be swept by Minnesota. So I have this series going 1-1. I think that honestly, in my opinion, Minnesota would have gotten lucky in the first week. But I still pick them to win. But I think that Green Bay cements themselves that like we are the NFC North, and you have to beat us to make it to the playoffs. In this game.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Week 9 matchup, they go to San Francisco. I have them losing this game. I agree with all the points you guys made earlier. San Francisco is going to be too strong. I think that I don't think it's going to be a blowout. There was definitely improvement between the NFC Championship was difficult to watch, but if you watch the two games back to back, there was improvement in Green Bay's ability against San Francisco. They were just a superior team. I think San Francisco is still a superior team, and Green Bay gets their second loss of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the 49ers are going to dominate us once again. I don't think it's going to be close at all. I don't think we did enough to address the needs on the defense to match up with a team like the 49ers. And I don't trust Mike Pettin as a defensive coordinator. If you watch the championship game, he did really nothing to try to change it up and try to make adjustments. He just kept doing what he wants to do, and it blew up in his face. And I think with this loss, I think the hot seat starts for Mike Pettin.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with both of you too. I think that San Francisco's, until they get proven otherwise, is the best team in the NFC in my opinion. I think that, again, the rich got richer. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo takes a step this next season. I think he proves why he was worth the second round pick. I think he proves why he's a starting quarterback, why he's worth the money that they're paying him. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Debo Samuel between now and then. But I do think that just pure talent and head coaching, I still think Kyle Shanahan's a better head coach, and I have to give it to San Francisco.
Yeah, all right. Well, all in agreement there. Third straight pick. So at the halfway point in the season, I have Green Bay at 6-2. Mitch, you and Skylar both have Green Bay at 5-3. Week 10 matchup. They head home. They play the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have them beating the Jaguars. This is pretty easy to me. Jacksonville is in the midst of the 6-3 build in like 7 seasons, basically. Green Bay gets that win against Jacksonville.
Packers are going to win this. It's going to be a blowout. Jags are horrible. I couldn't even name you their best player. I just don't like this. Nah. Okay. So Packers win.
Yeah. If Doug Marrone's not gone by now, he is after this game, because it's just Jacksonville needs they need a lot of change in that organization. They need to get out of Jacksonville, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, all right, all in agreement there. Week 11, they go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. I have Green Bay losing this game. Large part of it is that I'm very high on the Colts. When Green Bay ran against really tough offensive lines last season against Philadelphia as well as against the Niners both times, they didn't play as well. And also, Phillip Rivers has historically played pretty well against Green Bay. Hasn't always won them, but he's played pretty well. I like the Indianapolis defense. I think secondarily, they're really underrated. I love the linebacker core, and I think that with the addition of DeForest Buckner, and we talk about maybe some of the issues Green Bay might have on the right side of the offensive line, it creates a perfect matchup, and Green Bay loses to Indianapolis. This also feels like a trap game. I'd also like to state that. This, to me, felt like a trap game for Green Bay. So Green Bay loses to Indianapolis.
Shut up. Stop trying to save yourself. I think this is going to be a Packer win. I don't believe in the Colts offense. I've said that multiple times. I don't think they pose a threat to our defense, but I think it'll be an interesting matchup, the Packers offense against the Colts defense. I don't think they're going to let us have their way with them, but I think we're going to do just enough to get a nice solid win over the Colts.
See, as much as I was like I really love to pick on the Colts. They were my team to pick on for a while there. I feel like I'm in the midpoint between the two of you. As much as I don't believe that Phillip Rivers is going to take a step up with the Colts, I don't think he's going to like be worse. I might be a hypocrite now if I go back and look at the last 2 episodes. Or like Cincinnati and Cleveland in particular. But I think that the Colts as an organization are good, but that the Packers are better. So I have the Packers winning this game. Not that the Colts are bad. Packers are just better. The Colts aren't consistently good, in my opinion. They're not consistently showing why they're the top of the AFC South, even though they should be the top of the AFC South. They're not. So I have to give it to Green Bay.
All right. Well, we have the Indianapolis episode coming up in the episode after this next one, so we'll get into it at that point.
Another Homer episode.
A week 12, they host the Chicago Bears. I have them winning this game. I'll go back and listen to the Chicago episodes. I think Green Bay is just too strong. Chicago has huge questions on the offensive line. In the secondary, they're still strong at the linebacker position, but there are some questions across that defense. Quarterback position has massive questions, and really it's just Allen Robinson there. David Montgomery, I think, is underrated. I think he's going to have the ability to play well, but I think Green Bay is just too much for Chicago.
I think the Bears are going to win. That 10 tight end offense, I just don't know how you defend that, man. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I think this is going to be an easy win for the Packers. I think that the Chicago Bears offense is going to keep them from a win, even though I think the defense will keep them in the game, but the offense is just going to hold them back too much. So, Packer win.
Green Bay's got to be careful here because if our predictions hold right, they're going on. They play two teams that they basically outclassed the last 2 weeks, Jacksonville and Indianapolis. And Chicago's coming off a bye. And if I look at my Chicago, they just beat the Vikings before they go up and play the Packers. So for me, this could be a trap game for the Packers. It could be. I still think that the Packers are better than the Bears. And I still think that the offensive line questions for the Bears makes it harder on Trubisky or Foles, whoever's starting at quarterback, because the Smith brothers are just too good as defensive, as pass rushing, and so Montgomery can prove otherwise. They don't really have a run game. But I think that it's hard. They need to be careful here because Bears will have 2 weeks to prepare against this Packer team. I still have to give it to the Packers, but I think that they need to be careful.
Yeah, all right, definitely. We'll see how it is. Week 13 matchup, they host the Philadelphia Eagles. I have Green Bay losing to Philadelphia. And allow me to rationalize for a moment. I agree 100% that Brandon Brooks was a big loss, but I think Philadelphia improved defensively. And a lot of that core defense is still there. A core defense that was good enough to stop Green Bay in back-to-back red zone drives to win the game. They were good enough. And I think that even without Brooks, whoever they replace him with, I like what Doug Peterson brings. I think offensively they're going to be a lot better. I like the run game that Philadelphia has. We talk about Green Bay's inability to stop the run. Philadelphia ran the same run play against Green Bay 6 straight times in that Week 4 matchup in Green Bay in order to basically help them win the game. And I think Philadelphia comes right back with that, and Philadelphia beats Green Bay in Green Bay.
I hate you. I'm going to go with the Packers for winning this. I think that the Brandon Brooks injury impacts this game so much because they've already lost Jason Peters and Hal Vitae, 2 starting tackles, and now your best interior offensive lineman is gone for the season. I think that's, their offensive line got worse, and we talked about it, how their offensive line was a stabilizing force for that offense. And now that that's been deteriorated and showed weakness, now you got a worse offense line for an injury-prone quarterback, for a wide receiver core that has 2 older guys who are injury-prone and a bunch of nobodies and rookies. The only thing solid in that offense is their 2 tight ends and Miles Sanders. And I agree with you. It's a good defense. I think that they did get better with getting Darius Slay in the secondary, which they desperately needed. But I don't know if they dressed enough for that linebacking core. So I can't say that this is going to be the Eagles' defense for when they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And I just think that the Packers are a better team right now.
Yeah, with this offensive line, Doug Peterson's a smart guy, a good coach. He doesn't run the same run play 6 times with this offensive line. I'm looking at the best strength of that Packers defense, which is the Smith brothers and their past. 25 combined sacks between the 2 of them last season. That's monstrous. That's insane. Some teams didn't even get 25 sacks. So, that's the best part of the Green Bay Packer defense. What's the worst part of this Philadelphia offense right now? It's that offensive line. I think that Green Bay wins this game. I think it can be close. Doug Peterson's a good coach, a smart guy, again, like I said. But with too many questions on the offense, especially with health reasons, I have to give it to the Packers.
All right. Well, at the 3/4 point of the season, Mitch and Skylar both have Green Bay at 9-3, riding 4-game win streaks. I have Green Bay at 8-4, losers of 3 of the last 5 games. That week 9 through 13 stretch to me is brutal. But, we can talk about it later on. Week 14, in a matchup that we talked about in the last episode against Detroit, they go to Detroit to play the Lions. At this point, Green Bay is fighting for playoff positioning. I think Green Bay just overpowers Detroit the same way they did week 2 and gets a win in this game.
I agree with you. Another easy win over the Lions for the Packers.
Yeah, the Packers aren't dropping a game in division, except for that week 1, and that's just a surprise. After that, they are determined to show why they're one of the best teams in the NFC. And Detroit is just their punching bag. So I have to give it to Green Bay.
I like that. Detroit's their punching bag. I'm going to put that on a shirt. Week 15 matchup, they host the Carolina Panthers. Again, we talked about in the Carolina episode, Carolina has way too many questions. We don't know where they're going to be offensively. This Green Bay team was good enough to beat Carolina last year, and I think Carolina fielded a better team last year than they will this year. Green Bay gets another easy win.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think the offense for the Carolina Panthers got worse, even though they have Christian McCaffrey, and I've stated how much I hate this rush defense. He didn't do as well against us last year, and we still won. So I think that we're better. We're just a better team, and even though we have a bad rush defense, it's not going to matter in this kind of game. So easy win for the Packers.
Yeah, no, I just have to give it to Green Bay. I think I'm cautiously optimistic about what Matt Rule can do in Carolina, but not this season. This season's going to be rough for Carolina fans. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I agree. Week 16, they get a primetime showdown where they host the Tennessee Titans up in Green Bay. I have them beating Tennessee. I know we talked about the run offense that Tennessee has. Tennessee, to me, just has huge questions on the offensive line, and at some point, Tennessee's going to have to throw the ball. And even if they don't have to throw the ball, I think that they still have issues on that offensive line. They have one good wide receiver. Tight end position has questions. Secondary receivers has questions. Derrick Henry can really only run the ball. Defensively, they've been hurt in the secondary. The pass rush isn't necessarily there. Green Bay wins that game.
I disagree. I think the Titans are going to beat us. I think Derrick Henry is going to exploit the weakness that I've talked about, all episode against our rush defense, because I don't think there's a single player on our defense that could stop Derrick Henry in the run. You talk about it, if they decide to pass, I think A.J. Brown is a pretty good option, and I know that they don't have, other players of that caliber, but I do think they have some nice depth pieces. I know Corey Davis hasn't really been, what he was supposed to be, but I think he's solid enough to be consistent. And I think Geno Smith is kind of a sleeper. He didn't get to play much because of Delaney Walker being there, but now that Delaney Walker isn't there, I think he's, shining in that offense. And your point about the offensive line, I think it's solid enough, even though they did lose a big part of that at right tackle. But I think that, it's just one part of that offensive line, and they're most likely going to go with an in-house guy who knows the playbook, and he's played with these players. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a loss. And I think that the Titans defense is, it's solid enough. There are some questions with the secondary and with Jarrell Casey gone in that middle of the defense, but I think that the Titans just match up well against us, and we're going to lose.
So yeah, I usually agree with Mitch when it comes to the Titans. I think the Titans are the one of the better teams. I'm high on Mike Vrabel. I think he's a good coach. I think he's building something awesome down there in Tennessee. But for this game, I have to give it to Green Bay. I think it's gonna be similar to the Detroit game last year, where at that Detroit ran for 170 yards on you guys, and you still fucking won the game. I do agree that Derrick Henry is going to tear Green Bay a new asshole. But Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. and he has most of his weapons back from last year. And that defensive line just isn't good enough for Tennessee to beat Green Bay. Can't give enough pressure on Aaron Rodgers. So I have to give it to Green Bay because I think that they're on a roller coaster or they're on a train heading for the playoffs. They're not going to stop for anyone.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Skylar. So week 17, they go to Chicago to play the Bears. This feels like a trap game in the sense that, typically speaking, this would be a game where maybe Green Bay sits their starters. But now that we're doing the different NFL seedings, where only the number 1 seed gets the bye, I don't think Green Bay is going to be locked into that number 1 seed in order to sit everybody. They're really going to be fighting for something. Green Bay beats Chicago in Chicago.
Just one simple statement. The Bears sucks.
Fair enough. Skylar.
Again, just like that last time the Packers and the Bears play, I think that it's a trap game. Like you said, I think that you need to be wary because for me, the Bears are fighting for playoff contention. It's between them and Arizona. Who's going to get that last spot? And for me, at least personally, them and Arizona. And the Bears have to win to be considered for the playoffs. So it's a tough game for Green Bay, but Green Bay, again, is still the better team on paper. If the Bears figure stuff out with that offense, God help anybody, because if they figure stuff out with that offense, we see what they can do. I still have to give it to Green Bay, though. I think Green Bay, again, like I said, against Tennessee, it's a train heading for the playoffs, and they're not stopping for anyone, and they're just gonna have to pull it. They beat the Bears again, and my dad's gonna be throwing something at the TV.
All right. Well, at the end of the season, Skylar, you have the Green Bay Packers at 13-3 and winners of 8 straight games. Mitch and I both have Green Bay at 12-4 on the season. 12-4 is good enough for first in the NFC North and third in the NFC in terms of playoff ranking. Where do you guys have Green Bay in terms of your playoff ranking?
Same exact spot. They are the 3 seed in the NFC.
Same.
3 seed and 3 seed. So, Skylar, you have them as the 3 seed at 13-3?
Yeah, I have the NFC. For me, the top 4 teams are it's not even a con. Like the top 4 teams are San Francisco, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Green Bay. It's those 4 teams that are going to be fighting it out. And for me, it was just looking at because they played those 3 other teams throughout the season, and the only one I had them beating was Tampa Bay. Because I honestly think that you could see a 16-0 team coming out of the NFC. I don't think that it's going to be whoever fights it out between those 4 teams, because I think they all have to play each other sometime in the season.
Wow.
So it's rough. Because those teams all 4 of those teams got better. Green Bay was the one team that didn't improve the most, in my opinion. But they're still get the 3rd seed because New Orleans, Tampa Bay have to fight for a division. So.
Yep. All right, well, fair enough, boys. Well, that is our episode today. We appreciate everybody for hanging in there with some technical issues that we had. The next episode we have is on Houston, so tune in on that as we talk about the clusterfuck that is the Houston Texans organization.
Watch baby cry.
I'm not going to cry, dude. I honestly don't care anymore. Like, I got over it because I just understand that as long as Bill O'Brien is there, this team is going to be bad. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Follow us, subscribe on YouTube, SoundCloud, as well as Spotify at 4th String Sports Podcast. Also find us on Facebook and Twitter, 4th String Sports Podcast, as well as on Reddit. Skylar has a Reddit thread there under the same name. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Boys, you have any other closing? I'm sorry. Also, you can email us at 4thstringsp@gmail.com, FOURTH stringsp@gmail.com. Any closing thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I just got a little shout out for all you sports fans. The end of July is also going to be good because we get the final football season of The Last Chance U, which is going to be awesome. And they also announced that The Last Chance U is switching over to basketball, so that should be really interesting.
I love that show. That show's always so fun.
I personally am going to be keeping a close eye on college football for the next couple of weeks. With everybody going back, some of those COVID numbers are continuing to go up, and there's a correlation between states that reopened way too early and states that didn't on who's getting more numbers for in terms of COVID. So I think that it's just gonna be interesting to see what happens because at least here in Nebraska, the university has a pretty strict policy on all of that. And we're going to be closer and closer to seeing if fans are going to be allowed in the stands and how many fans are going to be allowed in the stands, if any. So I think it's just interesting to see with all of this agreement that sports are going to continue at the end of July.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and we keep, strip teasing you guys when it comes to college football. We do have it set up here. We have some stuff we want to talk about. It's just as the sports world continues to change, there's updates on it, and college football falls to be low man on the totem pole, but we do have some episodes on it that are going to be coming up. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Everybody have a fantastic night, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Fourth String Sports podcast.